So, welcome everyone. This is the sixth session in our Becoming Regenerative series. Many of you, I think, if not all of you, have been to one of these or more than one of these sessions before. So, just reminders that we're engaged in a participatory process. So, the nature of regenerative practice is it requires your participation. So, we encourage that. Love seeing almost everybody on screen. Matthew's transitioning to a computer, so we'll see him soon. And the thing about this, I think, is we're not trying to come up with definitive answers a lot of times in this work. So just treat it lightly. Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to Tom, and he's going to give us a little opening exercise after our initial opening exercise.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus, and great to see everybody here. Thanks for showing up today. And just to add to what Marcus said there, this is kind of an exploratory experience where we're leaning into this question on what does it mean to cultivate consciousness and why does it matter? So I thought we could start this session off today really just pausing for a moment. Invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. Take a couple of deep breaths, trying to sense in your body where you're feeling the breath most clearly, sensing the bodily sensations, just observing those around the breath,
Mhm.
trying to bring your attention fully to those sensations, wherever you feel it most clearly. Now observing any feelings, emotions coming up around this as you bring your attention to your own experience, to this present moment. And then any thoughts you observe arising in this moment. Now, seeing if you can observe these thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations together as a whole. Just trying to get a sense of wholeness in this moment. Noticing whatever's arising. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes back up. So to begin here, I'm going to share a premise as well as a guiding question. Our premise here, which is really an invitation to explore, is that regeneration requires an understanding of unique living systems, which is developed through conscious participation within these systems. And along with that, a guiding question: how do we participate more consciously to develop a deeper understanding of ourselves and our unique places? Just take a moment to hold that, and I invite you along with that to set an intention for this session to participate consciously. And with that as an aim to develop a deeper understanding of ourselves and our unique places, which includes this system that we're in today together. Okay, so our opening exercise, I'm going to invite you to practice something that is referred to in this particular lineage that we're coming from called two-way attention. And it's very simple. Again, trying to maintain some of that conscious energy that we generated so far in this opening, staying reflective, observing ourselves. I'm going to invite you to study this image. And as you do, to observe how you are taking in the impressions from this image, observing your thoughts, observing your feelings, observing your bodily sensations. Just sit with this image for a moment, observing yourself. How are you taking in these impressions? What patterns do you recognize? And so I invite anyone who's willing to share, what did you notice in how you were taking in the impressions from this image? What patterns did you notice? And what effect did observing yourself in this way have on how you were thinking, how you were feeling, how you were relating to this image? Go ahead and just jump in if you haven't.
I noticed that when I was first going into the picture, I noticed this pattern of wanting to figure out what's happening, where, what, who. And then when I noticed that, somehow I began to I noticed that I was sort of going deeper into the picture and that pattern started fading away. And then I was just kind of noticing shapes and colors, the trees. Um, but yeah, that's what I noticed.
I noticed a couple of things. Uh, I think in a way, the overall notice thing I noticed was being judgmental, but within that, actually looking at this and wondering how these people actually live and what their lives are like, and how they can maintain health if that's possible. And at the same time, I I felt like there's probably a lot of community there. And it's also just, I mean, this is where the judgmental comes in as well. It's kind of um, dist- distressing. And in a way ugly and in a way captivating.
I had the same initial judgmental response, and then I immediately did a mind search as to I think I've been there, and it reminds me of some places in Southeast Asia. So I was, testing this pattern against patterns I had already seen. And then I suddenly noticed the rather good-looking buildings in the background, one with a blue roof, I guess light blue roof, dark blue roof, and just noted the contrast, which probably got me back to being judgmental again, where there seems to be some wealth in the background and some poverty in the foreground.
For me, I noticed something similar. I would take judgmental for me one step further, like the negativity of this scene. And what I noticed for me was I was my mind forces myself to think about the positive right after I think about the negative. And can somebody else mute? Thanks. And so it was an interesting thing for me to notice my shift, and then I started to think, wow, what an opportunity to live on water, and could it, what are the possibilities of this situation? So that's, yeah, it was nice to take in the noticing.
So let me follow up on that with a question. How did observing yourself, how does observing yourself, taking impressions in this way, enable you to see potential?
I can answer that. I was thinking about this, like, I realized that I started really with the like vital automatic energies of like, holy shit, how do I or anybody survive this? And then went to the sensitive, feeling, just feeling for the people, feeling for the place. And then boop, it was like, okay, how would we fix this? How would we clean it up? That was really interesting. And just how automatic all of those things are. They're just so automatic. And it's like, okay, like, I mean, I'm really good at cleaning stuff up.
I also kind of forced my mind into a shift. I had that visceral, like, oh, this is not a place I would want to be. I'm not going swimming there. But then I was like, obviously, these are homes. Somebody is there. So I tried to think of like, okay, who are the people who see this every day? And then I did something that I don't often do. I like scanned the edges. And so I was just looking at the edges, and the first thing that caught my eye was the palm tree in the upper left. And I love tropical places. And so I was like, maybe this is a place I would want to be. And so I started wondering, I'm assuming these are like the backs of the houses. And I was like, I wonder what the fronts of the houses look like. Like maybe from the front, this could look like a place I might stay, you know? And then I noticed like the chickens and the laundry hanging out there, and started trying to kind of build compassion of like, if this is where I had to dry my laundry, like maybe they like the view to the opposite side. It looks like there's a lot of plants. Like maybe they enjoy sitting on their back porch. I don't know. So it went kind of all over the place, but I did consciously try to redirect away from my gut reaction into a little more just curiosity.
So thank you everyone for sharing there. Leading up to this next exercise, actually, let me just check in with Marcus. Did you want to present this, Marcus?
Um, yeah, I guess I'm up.
Okay.
Yeah, the one I just wanted to add to what Allison just shared. Um, your question prompted me toward curiosity. Your last question, Tom, right? So, and it's just a curiosity in trying to understand, well, why is it like this? What are the factors that produce this way of living? And trying to stay out of any judgment that it's bad or good, or, but right, really just trying to seek understanding and having a curiosity around that. Um, so, along those lines, we want to bring a framework in here. Many of you are familiar with this. This is modes of behavior. You may know if you've taken the scope of consciousness class with Regenesis, this should look familiar. And so one of the premises we're playing around with as it relates to consciousness is that observation, right? That self-observing quality, just being able to observe the effect of stimuli on the way we think, the way we act, and our being states, and so forth. That observation's at the heart of, and especially self-observation, is at the heart of regenerative practice. So we can't really change how we're thinking or acting without practicing that. And as some of you already pointed out, right, there's that you are noticing like this mechanicalness of your reaction to the photograph, right? That, oh, oh, I'm going into judgment. Oh, I'm going into, right, uh, a bunch of different things that were kind of well-worn paths for us, right? A lot of times those initial reactions are the ones that, right, are the automatic responses, right? And so we're actively operating in, especially initially, in a reactive mode. Um, and then maybe some of your, the way you normally think about these things, right? Maybe some of those things start to creep in and ego comes to the fore a little bit. And then the thing I observed was this framework in action in Tom's exercise. That, I think towards the end, especially that last question, Tom, that you are prompting us towards maybe a more purposeful way of behaving relative to this. Um, so connecting with the context of the current moment, there's a question around how are we managing ourselves in a world that is transforming like ours is? Very high levels of complexity and uncertainty. This feeling, and I was feeling it in the opening exercise, this feeling like we're maxed out. When Tom was prompting us with that little meditation, it just felt like the 10,000 things in Taoist philosophy was like, super present and overwhelming me a bit. So just, this feeling that we're maxed out and we don't have the capacity to be able to deal with all that complexity and uncertainty. So this core practice we have of using frameworks for observation and reflection, we want to put you into breakouts and have you play around with this. Um, so, part of the idea here is in using these frameworks, it allows us to focus and right maybe tune out a little bit the 10,000 things that are kind of always trying to intrude into our thinking and our minds. Um, so with that, we're going to put you into breakouts. Do we have a slide here, Tom, for the breakout? You're muted, Tom.
Yeah, my apologies. I'm trying to figure out how to set up breakouts and share at the same time
Oh,
here.
I did set up the breakouts. They're ready to go. Sorry.
Oh, you did great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, give me 1 second.
All right. So what we want you to do in the breakout is bring to mind a recent situation or challenge where you felt like you were operating beyond your capacity and you struggled to manage yourself effectively or as effectively as you could. And so we want you to use this framework as a lens, the modes of behavior as a lens. And so, what are the patterns of thinking that you can recognize behind the way you were responding in that situation? And then, what is the value of the reactive and ego modes of behavior, right? Where, um, as with many of these frameworks, it's not like the lower orders, right, are worthless and we're trying to merely transcend them and try to be purposeful all the time, right? But what's the value of reactive and ego modes of behavior? And there's a couple other questions there for you to play around with. So bring that recent situation to mind, and we're going to put you into breakouts. And I think we had planned for about, what was it, Tom, 15 minutes for this, or yeah,
Yep,
15 minutes.
it said 15. I think that'll be good.
I'm gonna redo the timer. Any questions? Here you go.
Are these questions available in the breakout?
Oh, shoot. We forgot to put them in the chat. Let me grab them quick.
Might also consider taking a screenshot if that's easier, but we'll offer both here.
There it is. I think I could send a message into the breakouts too, so I'll do that. You got your room, Matthew? Oh, are you in one?
I rejoined
Ah, I see.
from my computer, so you probably had my phone in a
So
breakout.
I'm gonna stick you.
What's up, Tom?
So Matthew, good to see you here, man.
Good to see you too.
Come on. There you go.
All right.
All right. And I can do this broadcast thing. I don't think it stays there. Oh, sure, it's not letting me. Oh, and it looks like it's limited to the number of characters. Let's see.
So just out of curiosity, because I don't recall, you and I right now will still be on the recording.
Oh, yeah, thank you. All right. So, what did you notice about the application of this framework to your situation? What came up? A couple quick reflections, and we're actually going to put you right back into a breakout to work on it some more, but a couple quick reflections coming out of that one.
I can share. I had an aha moment.
Great.
Tom and I like talked around things, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I realized that when I got to purposeful, that aspect of like ego before felt very solipsistic, and once I was at purposeful and felt connected to like the long arc of history and the
Mm,
longer developmental purpose and like the larger forces around me, then ego felt higher order. It didn't feel like, oh, I'm not very good at this. It felt like you may never be good at this, but that's the point. Like
mm.
it had a new value that was awesome.
So it's kind of like an ego shift.
Yeah. Like
Mm,
it helped me think about like that level of determination that keeps you going no matter what over time because you're dedicated to something,
Right.
as opposed to me, myself, and I are my three favorite people.
Yeah. It's the connection between ego and purposeful, right?
Mhm.
Is yeah. What is it in your ego that is driving you towards the purposeful?
And likewise, realizing that the reactive is like, wow, that's beautiful. I want to be able to do that.
Mm.
Like that indicates to me something that's resonating. Um, if I'm at a higher order consciousness, as opposed to just like, ugh, or yeah, you know where I'm going. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Miguel.
Yeah, um what Darren just said made me think about if you're looking from purposeful down or from reactive up. So the direction of that look down. So if you I see down, if I'm trying to be purposeful, I recognize that my individuality is valuable because I have my own essence, and that can add value to whatever system that I'm working within, and that's okay. Versus if I'm centered on the ego, then I'm unable to make those contributions
Mm.
because all I'm looking, the same thing with reactive, like the ability to perceive and take action upon something in a purposeful way. It's okay, but not just being directly or jumping on a reaction if you're looking up. So that was thank you, Karen.
All right, great. So I think we're going to put you right back into breakouts and have you work on this a little bit more. Um, Tom, you want to cue this up a little?
Sure. So for this one, yeah, just giving you a little prompt and a few questions to explore in your groups. So the prompt is bring to mind a recent situation or challenge where you felt you were beyond your capacity and you struggled to manage yourself effectively. No, I'm sorry, this is what we just did.
That's what we just did. There we go.
Okay, bear with us. Thank you. Um, all right. Now, this is a new one. So bring to mind a specific upcoming event or engagement where you are experiencing a sense of uncertainty. Now emphasize a more purposeful mode of behavior in your approach. Image yourself in this specific place, in this potential state you are aiming at. Explore the following questions. In this mode, what are you caring most about? What is the primary source of your motivation? What do you believe is in your control? What are you taking responsibility for? What gives you the permission to act? And then you can contrast this potential state with the one you just explored in that first exercise where you felt you were beyond your capacity and exploring what's the difference between these two states. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and break out and then we'll come back together and reflect as a group on what came up for us.
Welcome back.
All right, we got everybody back.
Yep.
Okay, so reflections from your experience with that exercise. What's coming up for you? What's shifting? What's moving?
I think the biggest thing for me is like,
Can we take down the questions?
You want to take them down?
Yeah, so I can see people as they talk.
Sure, yeah. I'll just stop sharing for the moment.
but I think one of the biggest things that I'm starting to sense into is like, okay, they're like Karen was hitting on this a little bit earlier too. Is like you have a reaction to something, and then the ability to like sit in the awareness of that, and even having a little bit of structured thinking gives you a fighting chance to use a higher ordered ego to reach into purposeful and then come back down. And especially like the structure around the questions of the three core capacities. I was observing in my group, and I watched the three core capacities literally work somebody through. They're obviously not in a reactive state because they're thinking about something in the future, but like at least in the ego mode of behavior, sort of walk themselves through the three core capacities into purposeful, was really cool.
Is there some connection there between using the frameworks and cultivating consciousness that you're seeing? And you mentioned having the structure, you mentioned keeping the frameworks in mind. How does that help you remain more conscious?
My experience of it is like the there's like a in breath, out breath of the space in myself in relationship to the structured thinking. So like there's a when it comes to consciousness, the ability to sort of be with all of those things requires a relaxed body, a field around me that I feel sturdy in. And the consciousness relationship to that is being able to go back and forth between the intellect and the other centers and not get overloaded too much in one, and like trying to be purposeful or trying to be these things, and just relaxing, and or being able to even observe or like not like a certain aspect of my reaction. So the consciousness is like the holding that allows for all of it to work. And the more that that muscle gets growing for me, the more I can dance through those modes of behavior in a way that hopefully more productive.
There's something interesting that you mentioned there. When you were talking about you talked about ego at the higher level, and that brings to mind something that Karen said to me when she was uh, thinking about her process, and she described how when ego can be at the lower level, it can be very close to reactive, and it's almost they're kind of intertwined. So that's interesting just to think about it, that ego can pretty much, just like energy state levels of like electrons, it, it can be at a lower level that's very close to reactive, and you can also bring it up to a higher level that will help you in the purposeful portion. Um, that's very I just yeah, Karen, Matthew, thanks.
Tom, I don't know where you and Marcus are going next, but what comes to mind for me as we speak this through and reflecting on my share, um, is what is our collective, I want to say like responsibility to being purposeful in how we are together. Because I'm thinking about like we're living in like incredibly traumatic times. And my reflection, I was thinking about what feels overwhelming ties into my CPTSD and how hard it is. Like, I can stay all high level, whatever, and then I'm in a situation that triggers my CPTSD, and holy moly. And I think about like we are literally speaking as for myself as a United States citizen, um, in a situation where like vital ego energy is running everything. Uh, and I'm just like, what, like the potential of when we're all aiming together to aim for purposeful and to support the field for us to be purposeful is so completely different. Like the potential is infinitely different. So it's like that really hits me in the heart about like, wow, my aims to be purposeful and your aims to be purposeful and self-aware is like this huge gift to humanity.
So I'm curious what that brings up for you, thinking about the role of doing this work in a group and community.
I'm assuming that's for everybody.
Could be for you, Karen, but if others want to jump in, that's fine.
Yeah, I'd love
I
to
mean,
share with everyone.
can I bring up something before that?
Yeah.
Which is I'm aware in the process of doing this of who we're being purposeful, because I feel lots of ways that purposeful can um be from a very well-intentioned do good paradigm, which is where the ego very much sneaks back in to the, oh, I'm being purposeful. So I just want to, I mean, and I also want to, I guess, reinforce what Marcus said about like not getting judgmental, about this like higher and lower stuff, um, as much as like really that each of these have an essential role. And so it's a gift to be in our ego. It's a gift to be in reaction. If we can build like awareness around it and be, building for some level of response ableness, right in there. So, uh, in terms of like doing in community, if I mean, I'm actually longing for this. I live in intentional community, but I don't have this in my community right now. I'm trying to create and long for a community that can um be in that observation role. Like we talk about self-observation, but sometimes those are like we don't see our own blind spots, right? So to have like a community of practice that I feel is, that I trust, that I've built some level of trust with, who can say to me, like, wait, like, what state of being are you, like, can bring me back to consciousness, right? Like right now, I'm trying my best to catch myself in these moments and create a pause and to remember what my purpose is and try to, but I would love to have like a community that could support each other in that.
Yeah, I kind of hold purposeful. That purposeful level is it's not around a particular purpose, right? It's just a conscious decision on the part of a group that we're gonna try to discover our purpose, our collective purpose together. And that's the mode I hold as kind of being purposeful, right? It's not around a specific purpose.
Yeah, Vicky, and then we're gonna jump into our final short exercise here.
I'm just going to come back to Karen's point about being a US citizen at the moment, which I'm not, obviously. One of maybe how many other people aren't here? It's been a really interesting time to see in my career, or the people I come in touch with, which is generally international. I've never known US citizens in my lifetime of work until the last year apologize as the first thing. And that's a really interesting, humbling, I think, experience for many. And maybe the purpose of this is to reconnect with that joint purpose together. And, in Europe, we've had our wars, we've had Germany's highly, shamed of its past at times. More recently, we've had Brexit Britain, and we've had to apologize to all our European counterparts of what a terrible vote that was. And maybe these things are sent to bring us together globally, That's just a little thought.
Mm. Nice.
Great. So I'm not seeing it. So that last exercise was actually designed around a specific framework some of you may have recognized implicitly. And I just want to make that explicit, and then we're going to do a short little journaling exercise. So the questions that we were exploring there had to do with what are called the three capacities. And the way we're framing it here is really in terms of three key shifts. All right, so we talked about, for example, what we were trying to remember the questions exactly, but right, where we were sourcing our agency. So taking responsibility for what is our work to do, as opposed to waiting around for directions from some kind of authority figure. All right, so a shift into being more self-determined. Scope of considering, right? In shifting from being a kind of a self-centered state, thinking mostly about ourselves, or could be even our small tribe, small group, to expanding that scope of considering, thinking about the bigger picture, thinking about the larger system, right? And then that locus of control in terms of, right, being managed by external forces to learning to manage ourselves. So final exercise is just going to be take a few minutes. I know we're a little bit behind schedule, so we might cut this just a little bit short. I think we'll have, let's say we good for like 8 minutes, Marcus?
Yeah, I think we can do 8.
Okay. So let's do 8. That puts us at 54. Um, and just kind of exploring the connections between these two frameworks that we're seeing, right? These three core capacities, these three shifts, and how they relate to modes of behavior. So again, take about 8 minutes. You can turn your camera off if you'd like. Do a little bit of writing, then we'll reconvene here at the top of the hour. For final reflection, if anybody would like to share a reflection on what's coming up for them in this final activity or in the session as a whole, please go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, so this was really powerful. And I would like to thank my group members, Matthew and Jessica as well, for helping this along. I think Matthew, I don't know whether you knew what was coming or you just saw it, but in any case, what I'm seeing for myself is this, that I know about the three core capacities and I forget about it. And so really being present to those three core capacities and then I see a direct relationship with the modes of behavior and how I can, there's more choice and more ability to actually self-observe within a framework.
I would like to change self-determined to us-determined. There's something for me, looking at that and then journaling and thinking what you shared, Marcus, before we went in as what you talked about is purposeful,
Right.
especially again, working with a community-led nonprofit, I honestly feel like there's something purposeful for me that shifts into like an us determined space rather than self-determined.
I may just add there that I think a good way to think about these capacities is across multiple levels, right? So you can think of them in terms of the systemic capacities as well, in terms of self-determined teams or organizations or communities. But that's another great way to frame that.
Go ahead, Miguel.
I wanted to point out the impact that it has on the thought when you put the modes of behavior in a vertical orientation, because you're looking at up and down and higher and lower versus when you look at it in the scope of consciousness, which is on the x-axis. And then if you think about axis, you think about three-dimensional space. And then when I added that other scope of that other triad, I was going all kinds of geometry. But anyway, how that impacts, the value that we assign to a step within or a stage of a mode or levels of thought or whatever the case may be when we shift the orientation.
So real quick, we'll come back here in a second, but Miguel and I are actually doing a session next month. It's going to be the third Wednesday instead of the second Wednesday next month. And it's actually going to be talking about what Miguel was just referring to is seeing levels unfold and those kind of interrelationships with levels. So it brought up our next session for me, Miguel, so I thought I'd plug it quick.
And it's Marcus' birthday on the 13th, by the way.
That's right. It's my birthday, so that's why we're shifting it. And Miguel's going to a conference, something. Yeah.
And that helps me too, because I'm going to a conference, so I'll be back.
Yeah, we got a couple minutes. Any other reflections on the session? Anything you wanted to add in, Tom, to build on any of that?
No, I'd be curious to hear other reflections if there are any.
Just for me, from what Miguel was just saying, is it's not a linear thing. It's not a hierarchical thing. If we're on those positions of a triangle and it's a rotating triangle, we are different. We take up different positions at different times with different people and different reasons. And that's okay, I know I'm guilty of probably being some very self-determined a lot of the time, and that doesn't necessarily, like, I find that can clash with younger generations a little bit, because they're very collaborative, right? And that they want everything co-created, and sometimes that frustrates me because I think you just need to bloody make a decision, get on with it, right? And so it's kind of interesting that we have to be, different things. For me, leading my business, I need to be in that position to determine what happens next. I can't be dithering around necessarily of making decisions with everybody else all the time. So, but there are times when, yes, I should do, for sure, probably, and think, and also stages of business. When you're in startup mode and you've got a vision and you're driving to that, then maybe you are in self-determination. But actually, at the point in time, you've got to scale. You can't do it alone. You've got to do it with other people. You've got to be in that scope of considering or what have you. So, yeah, I like to. Maybe I'm a bit black and white thinking normally all the time, and actually, it's these shades of grey in between these stages. Sometimes it's interesting.
That shines a nice light too on how these capacities work together as a whole as well, right? And just having one of them can be problematic, but when they're all working together as a whole, we get a higher degree of effectiveness.
Yeah, and just having the awareness of which mode you're in at any point, with whom.
Mhm.
And that was an element that was coming up for me is, I think part of what these do is, right, they bring our attention to their ways of bringing our attention to how we're thinking, right? And that just having that awareness is like the first step, I think, to being more conscious, right? So we're actually starting to pay attention to what's going on, is kind of that first step. Maybe we'll get to the scope of consciousness that Miguel referred to in a session that isn't quite so introductory. Any other reflections before we call it a session? Thanks so much for your participation and active engagement in this. I'd encourage you to jump on the Circle community and share any other reflections or insights that may come to you as the days pass. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
Thanks,
all.
Marcus.
Likewise.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you. Thanks
So
much
much.
Everybody.
again.
Be well, everyone.
Lovely to
Take care.
see new and to see old and meet new friends. That's what I meant to say. Bye, friends.
Take care.
Yeah, bye.